So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And security of supply is indeed a more important issue for some countries than for others. If we look at the EU, and if we look outside of the EU, then this topic becomes even more diverse, depending on the geographic and political situation, or rather a combination of geopolitical factors influencing each and every country, especially in the Central Eastern Europe, and also including European neighborhood countries, Caucasus and Central Asia. Central Asia has become one of the key players, actually, if we take a look at the security of supply strategically in the context of long-term and strategic supplies of important energy resources to the EU in the future. My particular policy brief dealt with the phenomenon that we call energy islands. Energy islands have actually two meanings. One meaning is very technological. They are actually specific sets of devices that can produce a lot of energy, that can be erected in places where there is lack of electricity, and those are sometimes referred to as energy islands, or where there is a set of various diverse sources of production of energy. This paper, however, deals with slightly different energy islands. The energy islands that I'm going to refer to is basically regions within the EU which are not effectively interconnected with the rest of the EU in terms of interconnections for electricity and natural gas transmission, which can be both cause and consequence of various political and technical aspects. In my brief, I'm paying attention to two islands. One is the energy island of the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and the other island is completely in the other end of the EU. Geographically, it's the Iberian Peninsula, mainly Portugal and Spain, which has a narrow set of interconnections with the rest of mainland Europe, namely with the French energy market. There's a number of points to be looked at to understand better these situations of energy islands. First of all, we have to look at causes and consequences of the phenomenon of energy islands, of a region or states being energy islands, within the meaning that I explained. Second of all, it's which I like, and it's my very subjective individual approach. It's take a look at the phenomenon of energy islands through energy security risks, because risks. Evaluating risks is quite often one of the main points of departure for policy planning, especially for strategic planning of security aspects in most of the EU member states, especially those which do not possess their own natural resources that can be used for energy production or export. And finally, I'll take a look at some of the challenges that the energy islands and the EU indeed has to face to avoid energy islands appearing in the EU again, and to try to and when we speak about trying to connect energy islands that are in place. If we look at causes and consequences of the energy island phenomenon, then it's important to also know that historical background is important for various situations. And it is not only geography which is different for the Baltic energy island and the Iberian energy islands, also historical background, how these specific regions have come to a situation when they can be called energy islands. due to lack of interconnections with the rest of the EU. Historically, we can also see that there are differences and commonalities to the both energy island situations. If we take a look at the Baltic energy island situation, then the Baltic states, as post-Soviet countries, used to be integrated in the energy systems of the former Soviet Union. It was so-called northwestern energy ring of the Soviet Union, which encompassed northwestern parts of the Russian Federation, Belarus, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, forming a closed circle of energy supply, which was very effective in balancing itself and providing enough of energy capacity. The situation is quite different for the Iberian Peninsula. They have not had lack of energy production, and they have had rather closed energy system, exactly because of the reason that the Pyrenees, there were no or very insufficient interconnections with the French energy market between Spain and France. Due to the technical difficulties of putting in place transmission lines, be it pipelines or electricity wires over the Pyrenees. So in the Baltic case, the energy systems which had diverse capacities were integrated in an energy system, and are still integrated in an energy system which was operated and is being operated still together with third countries. That means countries outside the EU, which makes it a strange situation from the point of view of supply of energy or energy security in general. That the whole region of the EU is the energy supply stability depends on outside factors so much. Well, considering also this integration into an energy system that involves third country participation, and considering that this energy system is still operational and is working, is functional, the Baltic states, to my mind, have lack incentive to join the rest of the EU, not only because of lack of technical interconnections for electricity and for natural gas with other EU countries, but also because the current system is quite satisfactory for the situation. It can provide balancing powers for Baltic energy markets, and thus this is not a factor which is actually stimulating the Baltic countries to join the a wider EU energy market, electricity market specifically, because gas market is a slightly even more complicated thing. Energy companies certainly have a role in these energy island situations, while energy companies in Portugal and Spain, especially in Spain, the Spanish energy market, have been quite keen in trying to lobby interconnections with the French market. The Baltic energy companies, due to the reasons that I already mentioned, have not been extremely willing to change the status quo, considering that changing things radically would cost rather more than they would have to pay for staying in the current energy systems. And in case of the Iberian Peninsula or Iberian energy island, it is rather some political and public affairs and public relations aspects that hampered connecting Iberian energy island to the rest of the EU market via France over the Pyrenees. if we take a look at energy security risks that stem from the energy island situation, then again, there are commonalities and differences in the two cases. First of all, Spanish and Portuguese energy island is more of economic and technical character and doesn't have so much to do with a broader geopolitical broader set of geopolitical relations. Unlike the Baltic energy island, as we all know, the Baltic states are heavily dependent on one major energy resource, which is supplied from one major supplier, actually from one only supplier through one route of supply. I'm talking here about supplies of natural gas. As an example, if we take the Latvian energy market and energy production as an example, which somehow illustrates the situation, the complexity of the situation, then roughly 1/3 of electricity in Latvia is produced domestically through renewable sources, large hydropower. Roughly 1/3 is produced domestically in large-scale CHPs, but from imported Russian natural gas, which makes it already dependent on this one's particular energy resource. And finally, the last 1/3 of electricity has to be imported, and it's being imported mainly again from the Russian Federation, especially after the closure of Ignalina nuclear power plant in Lithuania December last year. This Ignalina nuclear power plant used to be one of the major balancing sources for the energy systems of the Baltic states. If we take a look at the Iberian energy island situation, then there is another aspect of having too little interconnections in place, especially if we talk about the electricity markets. Spain is one of the not only European but among world champions in renewable energy, namely in producing electricity from wind power. It has more than 18,000 megawatt installed wind power capacity, which is a huge amount of power that is there. But the problem is that at times during different seasons, this installed wind power capacity can produce more power than is really necessary for the Iberian countries, for Spain and Portugal together. And it has to be balanced out, and it can be done via interconnections, or could be done via interconnections. And they are also not able to export this green energy to the rest of the EU market via France, just because of insufficient transmission capacities. Simply there are no power lines in place. There have been insufficient power lines in place so far, and Spain is finally looking forward to having sufficient capacity power cable with France over the Pyrenees, which was finally agreed upon between French and Spanish governments with the slight assistance of the EU authorities.